Welcome to this afternoon's session. That was then, this is ServiceNow, presented by Mike Jordan. Mike Jordan has 22 years of custom application development using both Java and .NET technologies. Mike started with ODOT in 2004 as a consultant Java developer and hired on as a full-time employee in 2007 to oversee the transition from Java to .NET development. Since then, Mike has served as a solution architect for the software development group, establishing the .NET software development stack used by the department. Over the last year, Mike has transitioned to the role of ServiceNow Delivery Team Solution Architect, that's a long title, to assist the team in expanding the custom development aspects of the platform. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. I hope everybody had a good lunch. I had a light lunch. Here's a piece of advice. When you know you're going to give a talk in front of people, do not go to Chipotle, get a big giant burrito with sour cream, cheese, and double hot sauce, and then come and give the speech. I learned that the hard way. That was the fastest and most painful presentation I ever had to give. So I suppose some of you are probably wondering why I have a cat on top of an aquarium as my opening slide. I have two really important reasons why I'm doing this, and I'll let you decide which one means the most to me. The first reason is because my 13-year-old daughter loves cats. And when I tell her I'm using a cat in my slide, she goes, "Aw," and that just really touches my heart. The second reason, that's more of a story. See, we used to own this cat named William. That's short for Prince William. And he thought of himself as the greatest hunter. He was an indoor cat, mind you, so the only thing he could hunt is his toys and flying bugs or whatever, and the fish that were in the aquarium. He would sit on that top of that aquarium for hours, just waiting. Sometimes he would reach down with his paw, like that cat is doing. That is not William, by the way. And he would jump down, and he would do that thing where he poked paws around the corner. And what's funny is I've caught him purring while he was doing it. He never caught a fish. He never even got close. And yet it didn't bother him that he wasn't getting results. He was still perfectly content, continuing on with his approach. And if I could speak cat, I don't think I could have talked him out of it. So cats aren't the only ones that have problems changing their approach to doing things, even when the results aren't always positive. I can't count the number of times that I've had conversations with some business analysts about the front matter that goes in a requirements document. I don't know if you've seen these before. The document will start with something like the purpose of this document, and it's usually like a paragraph. The second one will be like about this document, and then there'll probably be a page of change history, like when the document was changed. And then somewhere in there, there might be, here's some additional documents in case this one isn't long enough. And don't even get me started on this page intentionally left blank. It's not blank if it has the phrase, "this page intentionally left blank" on it. So basically, you're on page 4 or 5 now, and finally, you're getting into the requirements aspect. So it's hard to make change happen. People are comfortable with what they've been doing, even when results aren't always forthcoming. So last year, on the ServiceNow delivery team, I proposed a different way to do things. It was just my own little take on some agile processing. I basically come up with this delivery pipeline approach to delivering software. And what I wanted to talk about today is I want to review that pipeline concept, because some of you who weren't at my presentation last year may not know what I'm talking about, probably don't. And then I want to go over what worked and what still needs work, and then talk about some next steps. So let's talk about creating this delivery pipeline and what that would look like. So the idea behind it was we would do multiple projects in parallel, and we would just chop them up into small pieces and start feeding them through this pipeline. The pipeline itself was based on 3 core foundations. The first was the concept of an agile mindset. Now, agile is an overused term. I mean, people have mostly heard it, and when you hear somebody say it, they think stories, epics, that sort of thing. Well, those are tools that we use to track work, but that's not Agile. Agile is about being willing to live with just barely good enough to get early feedback. Agile is about adopting a mindset that says, I'm willing to show unfinished work if it means getting to the next step. It's about willing to learn as you go. And that can require education, not just to the person doing it, but also to the person you're working with. The other concept was products versus projects. And this is kind of subtle. The idea of a project is you're working on something, it's going to end, and then you're free and you can go. The concept of a product is more of a relationship. It's an investment in something that the business values, and it's going to be something that you're going to partner with them about and kind of empathize with them and care about it. It seems like a subtle difference, but a project mentality is people are usually on a project desperately waiting for it to end. With the idea of a product, it's more like if we can build a partnership and a relationship, then it's not about you increasing scope and giving me more work and just, being difficult to satisfy. It's more about treating work as chunks of stuff that comes in the pipeline, gets prioritized like everything else. And lastly, the idea was we would maximize the work in progress. So the idea for us was we would visualize the work that we're doing, and we would have swim lanes identifying where it was, and then there would be one swim lane in the center that was work in progress. That one needed to be kept full. It's not that there are other lanes weren't important, it's just that this is where the developers are doing work. If that lane isn't full, it means you have developers sitting around not doing anything, and that's actually your most expensive and most costly and most timely asset. So maximizing that work in progress queue is necessary. It's also, if the work in progress queue is full and the queue right behind it that says ready for development is full, that's when I can go to management and say, look, I have more work than give me some more people, at least in theory. All right, so let's talk more about the Agile mindset. What worked and what didn't? Well, the Agile board that we used was actually a component inside of ServiceNow. It was actually effective. We were able to visualize the work. We were able to communicate the work that we had. The first thing we did when we turned it on is we found out we didn't have any work, which didn't make any sense to me because according to people around me, they had emails saying they were supposed to build something in ServiceNow. We adopted a 2-week sprint cycle, and we kept all of the parallel efforts on the same cycle because trying to track 5 or 6 different cycles would have been too complicated. So we're always in a 2-week sprint. We're always doing work. It made it easier to plan the sprints. We would start at the beginning of the 2-week cycle. We would go over what work is ready. We would allocate it to a developer. We also adopted the Three Amigos concept. And if you don't know what that is, it just means that at the beginning of a sprint, you go over the stories with the business analyst or the product owner and the QA and the developer and just basically talk through what it is they're expecting to be able to get done related to those stories in the sprint that they have. It may mean chopping up the story because it's too big, or it may just mean redeciding how many stories they can actually do. And then this part was nice. The QA group started using the automated testing framework that was built into the platform, which I thought was really cool. That way they were able to automate a lot of the regression tests, and it sped up their process, at least from the execution standpoint. Well, now let's talk about what needed a little bit of help. The idea behind Agile is you're building the requirements and the system in parallel. This is hard to do. It's a hard concept for people to grasp because I'm asking you to take a risk that you're going to build something and run into oh no, I shouldn't have done this, I need to go backtrack. But the concept of Agile is that you're willing to take that risk because it'll be less expensive than spending 8 months in requirements before you even start. By going through and iterating through a process, you're basically prototyping, empathizing as you go. But it's hard. Nobody wants to show unfinished work. I got to eat my own dog food with this recently on a project I was on. I was regularly showing the business user how expensive it was to create something that was custom in the platform. And their impression was, this is taking too long. My first impression was, duh, I told you that when we started, but I didn't say it in so many words. My goal here was to be transparent in that what you're asking us to do is costly. And I'm showing it to you. I'm showing that this is costly. But I'm also telling you, here's what you're gaining from it. So it's a give and take. It's a conversation that we can have early. I can find out early that they're not satisfied with the speed. I can early tell them why they're actually going to gain benefit from it. And it helps us to build a relationship, because if we're not mad at each other at some point, we don't have a relationship, right? I mean, how many people have a close relationship where they don't somehow get mad at each other? And the other thing that it's hard for people to understand, and this is kind of tricky, Agile is not about speed, it's about early feedback. And I would try to tell the developers, look, I'm not asking you to kill yourself to hit your estimates. That's why it's the word estimate. It's an estimate. You're going to get done what you can get done. It's okay to not achieve it and be honest about why that was the case, because IT is very fluid. Things happen. The goal here is transparency, and also it's to help the business users refine their definition of what their product might be. Because you may find that 1,100-page requirements document that they spent 8 months building is missing the really useful feature because they forgot to put it in there, or you really only need to implement 300 pages because the rest is just fluff. And the idea behind an Agile approach is that by building it as you go, they'll see that, and they'll find out what it is they are missing. Instead of waiting until the end and finding out, well, you're stuck with what you got. How about that product versus projects? You know, the question marks up there are because I could not really win this. I had trouble winning it with myself. We can't let go of the word project. It's everywhere. At ODOT, all of our stuff is projects, right? But the need for this mindset became very apparent, and that's the one thing that did work, because everybody wants to get off the project they're on. They don't want to work with the person they're with. They're tired of the code base. They're feeling overwhelmed. And it's like, the definition of you is just always doing work. If your weight is on you, come see me and we'll talk it through. But the users are not our enemies. They're our customers. They may not pay us a dollar amount directly. Money isn't where I'm at. That's somebody else's choice to make. But they are about ODOT. They are who we are delivering this functionality to. So we have to be willing, and this is the part we are reluctant to do, we got to be willing to communicate a backlog and a wait list. We are a finite resource. We have to be willing to say, look, we have a 6-month backlog. So we would love to implement your system, but it's going to be 6 months before you get here. And the first thing you're probably going to do is say, well, I can't wait that long. I'm going to go hire a custom development team. Well, it'll probably take you how long to write up the POs for that? And then you'll have to interview those technical resources. And then you'll have to hire them on board. And then they'll have to get started. And as anybody in custom development knows, it takes at least 2 months to decide on your technology stack, even when it's already been decided for you. Trust me, I know. I've been doing this long enough. So that means by the 6-month time frame, when you've got that team together, you would have come up in our work queue. Oh, the other thing I pointed out there was, can we rename our PMs product managers instead of project managers? I just thought that was kind of amusing, because, I mean, obviously all the certifications say project manager. They probably would have a holy war over that one. I just thought it was amusing to put it up there. If we called them product managers, would that change our definition? All right, maximizing the work in progress. We did a lot of work. We finished a lot in a short period of time, and unfortunately, this is a downfall of the Agile board. It was great for tactical work, but it was really difficult to pull out numbers across time because we didn't really define it that way. I knew this would happen early on. I just chose not to address it because I felt like it was more important to actually deliver the work than to have numbers ready for this presentation next year. I always try to make my decisions in favor of the business versus what makes me look good, just barely. In any case, we've had like a monthly release since the last presentation I had. We had 2 full system upgrades. Each monthly release, we delivered anywhere from 2 to 5 applications out into production. Now, the applications measured in size from configuration change or a modification to an existing module to full-blown systems, such as the new salt ordering system, the visitor check-in application, and a job survey form, which has drummed up interest in a lot of other districts. So those were the successful things. We also created an intake process using the tools in the platform. Unfortunately, this is where I lost the Agile argument. I actually had an argument because we were in a room and they said, we need an intake process. And so we're going to create a form and a workflow, and then we're going to document the forms. And I'm like, why don't we just have an email address with the subject lines, the name of the project, the person who sent the email is the point of contact, and the text of the email is put in there as the description, because this is just about gathering together an initial request that's going to start a conversation. I could not win it. I could not convince them. So here's how it went. We built the form and the workflow, worked great. Problem is, here's how the requests start. They send an email to our project manager. Our project manager sends an email back saying, go to this form. But first she has to send them an email to the document to show them how to use the form. And so then they go to the form and fill it out and they submit it. And also, I bet if I asked him to stand up and say it, our CIO would not be able to tell you the URL to the form. I don't know what it is. And I've been there several times. But an email address is easy. Project, ServiceNow, ODOT. You could easily say it in a way that's memorable. You could market it. It would be easy. And it's like, how do I name it? Just put something in the subject. But I could not, for the life of me, convince the team that that was the easiest way to do it. Anyway, but it was still effective. So I still consider it a win on our side, because we did need some way to funnel the projects in. Right at that point in time, the emails were going all over to individual people, and it was really hard to tell when we were actively working on something. So, what needs work? When I originally started on this, I wanted to let the individuals working on it to kind of come up with their own way of doing stories and epics, and just kind of gave very vague, high-level recommendations. I wanted to let the team and the business analysts and so forth take ownership of that. But I think that ended up being kind of a mistake, because you can't, mentor somebody on something that doesn't have a standard, and it's really hard for people to get started when you can't show them something to begin with. And when you don't get consistency across your development efforts, it confuses everybody. The developers don't recognize the way this is being organized over here because it's different from that one over there. Granted, projects can be different and requirement structures can be different, but the story and epic scenario is about chopping up the work. That shouldn't have to be different. We need to get better at prioritizing and fair at prioritizing. My recommendation, I don't know if this will fly, first come, first serve. And the only exception to that is if you have an executive order from the government. I'm sure that probably won't work. We are in a politically driven organization. Jack Marchbanks would be the first to say that he's not going to apologize for that. We're in government, that's where we are. But the problem that we have is when we hit that reprioritization queue, we get things partially done for everybody instead of getting things completed. We're already talking about working on 5 things in parallel. And then the other thing is some more consolidated views for management of the workflow. As I mentioned before, that Agile board was very effective, but it wasn't good at communicating roll-up values. It didn't do a very good job of showing us where work is from a 30,000-foot view, and I think that's more of what we need. At a tactical level, where we're planning the individual sprints, it was effective, but I think we need more views of that stuff. Let's talk about next steps. So there's a lot of ways I could have gone with this, but I had an epiphany when I was putting the slide deck together. The only person's actions that you can directly change are your own. You can't directly change somebody else's actions or behaviors. What you can do is model the actions and behaviors you want, and through that, influence others. So I realized that next steps are, what do I need to change about my actions and behaviors so that I can then influence others to address some of those shortcomings that I just described? I need to adopt stewardship of the platform. I am given the role of architect. The definition of stewardship is, being careful, responsible, managing something that doesn't belong to you, caring for it as if it's your own, but it's not your own. But you're responsible for it. So I needed to adopt this attitude more. Now, when I originally set things in motion, I left some things intentionally unfinished because I wanted to see if the team would self-organize and they would address some of those shortcomings. One of the things I intentionally left was the testing part, and I'm so glad that the QA testers rose up and did that on their own. I knew that was going to be an issue, and Alikia, God bless her, recognized that early on, and was very vocal about it, and we were able to get the ATF framework spun up for her. All right, so the first thing I have to do is steward the pipeline. That's going to be modeling and mentoring and marketing. I've really got to sell this. This was a concept that I created. It's not agile out of the box. It's a variation of it that I'm trying to put forth. And I've got to show it to people. I got to continue selling it. As hard as that seems to be sometimes, it's just necessary. Different views into the workflow, I kind of already mentioned that, but there could be departmental level views or individual views even for the developers that might make things more optimal for them. This thing has to be, nobody looks at something if it doesn't have value to them. And if they're not reading numbers, nobody's going to give them numbers. You can't expect developers to fill in time values of what they're doing if they don't believe that anybody's reading it. And then mentoring how to build requirements and products in parallel. And that means working with the business analysts and the developers to show them how to fake things just to get requirements out and not commit to an implementation until you've got enough buy-in from the business that you're able to do so. Finding that ability, I'm living with ambiguity for a while, but now I've got a better refined definition, I can commit to an implementation. Stewarding the platform, well, there's a lot of stuff running on this platform, and as we build things in it, that just gets larger. And again, I knew this going out, but I intentionally left this technical debt for later. Well, later is now. My philosophy was, don't work on something until it hurts too much not to work on it. This is starting to hurt. This one-pager concept is mine. It's kind of wiki-like, but it's really more document-centered, a little more formal. It's just an idea in my head, but the idea is I want to take the elements of the platform and find a way to easily and gracefully structure it so that you could find what you're looking for quickly. And it also gives us a place to hang stuff as we learn it. Because I would discover new things about the platform that would be of value to someone, but I didn't have a place to put it that they would find. I mean, I could put it in SharePoint, but that's like sticking it into my recycle bin and expecting somebody to find it. The other is document and mentor the standards and requirements for it. And this is kind of a variation of what I said earlier. The prototyping part here is key because it also goes along the lines with making developers comfortable with showing unfinished work. I'm going to say that a lot. I'm going to say a lot of these concepts over and over again. I tried to explain what iterative requirements was over and over and over again. I'm going to do it more. If you don't learn it, I'm going to keep talking to you till you do. That's my threat, or my promise, or my stewardship, stewardship. The other is providing a centralized knowledge base, kind of a glossary of the terms so we can all have a shared understanding. Again, as we acquire more systems in here, it's like, what's the solid ordering system? I don't know. Well, let's put a definition in there for it. Let's tell people where it is. Let's describe what it does. Stewarding the people. So I feel like I need to provide regular brown bag sessions for the developers to help provide them with knowledge of things that they're not familiar with. Because I come from a custom development background, and the ServiceNow platform is more of a low-code solution. So for me, it's like I can provide them with some tools that they can use to help troubleshoot, debugging things better, and also better ways to structure their code. So we are starting to bring in some new team members. We have a new team member that just recently started. Our onboarding strategy was, here's your desk, there's ServiceNow, go. Am I right? That's usually how developers work. It's like, here's your desk, here's a laptop, go. We need something that helps streamline that a little bit more, bring people in, and even potentially leverage other resources that we have across the districts and empower users to be able to develop some of their own stuff. Because, right now we actually have a business analyst who isn't a developer. He's gathering the requirements and he's implementing it. So he basically takes our catalog items and in 2 weeks gathers the requirements, and another 2 weeks he implements it. So within 1 month they have a new catalog process, automating some interdepartmental process deployed out into production. Low code. And lastly, for myself, I need to make sure that everything that I'm doing is strategic. This is really hard for me. But I've got to empower others to do the tactical work. What that means is that I can't be in the coding path. I've got to be giving guidance and direction, but I have to empower the others to succeed. That may mean sitting with them and kind of pair programming for a little bit, but letting them do the work. Providing high-level directions and tools. That may mean that I'll still code some things, but if it doesn't have strategic value, I should be delegating it to somebody else. And that's a commitment I have to make to the platform. Last year, when I did this speech, this was my description of our recipe for success. Delivery pipeline plus ServiceNow equals business partnerships now. Doesn't that sound really cool? I mean, you could put that on like a shirt or something, right? But that was so 2018, really. Now, here's our new formula. Delivery pipeline plus stewardship equals lasting partnerships now. Huh? Come on, I had to use the same number of words. I could have said lasting business partnerships, but that didn't sound good enough. But I'm not done. You also have to include this additional tagline. This is ServiceNow, yeah! Thank you, people. Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions? I'm guessing no. I'll answer them in an entertaining way. All right. Thank you very much.